Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ryan, and today I'm joined by...
I'm Ted.
Nathan Nerdarch.
And today we're going to do a GM 911 about pacing your encounters in your game. But before we get into that, we just want you to go check out the Nerdy newsletter, which you can find the link down below in the description. And you'll be able to get all kinds of great stuff, game tips, and some exclusive content that's only available by going through the newsletter, as well as gaming with Nerdarchy. So back on to our regularly scheduled programming.
So pacing your encounters. Are you talking about the actual flow of an individual encounter, or like pacing things throughout an entire session or story arc?
Let's do both.
Yes. Yes was going to be my answer.
Yeah, because I found that even if combat seems exciting, like in your head, like this is going to be great from the DM's perspective, I'm just like, oh, this is lasting like 5 more rounds than I wanted it to.
You know,
I wish I could just pop all these goblins right now.
In this edition, though, I feel like, too, it's actually, like, harder to make those, like, unless you just keep pouring wave after wave of just, like, lame creatures in or whatever. Combats don't really last more than 3 to 4 rounds, which I think is optimal. That's, like... Absolute cap is like you want a combat to go 5 rounds. 5 rounds, everybody's like expended resources, taken some damage, they've done some cool stuff. 5 rounds seems kind of ideal.
Even bad rolls, you got to get at least one good shot in, right?
Yeah.
I think with 5 rounds, you're really starting to tax the player's ability to stay within. And that number, is that gets more if you have more players at the table. So if you've got a big table, you really want to, lower that even more to 3 or 4 rounds at most.
Well, like an encounter that runs for 2 of the 3 rounds, absolutely fine if you have a couple of those, and then maybe you have those couple of big marquee encounters that are like the hallmark of the campaign that might run that sort of way, or they're coming up against the big bad. But you can also talk about that encounter pacing in that regard of you have some classes that in some regards really shine when they haven't had the chance to have a short rest, and you have others that can get completely nerfed, diminished when they haven't had a short rest. Like so much of the Warlock power, I mean, like, alright, their main strength is their Eldritch Blast, so that's always kind of in their back pocket. But the Warlock, when they don't get that short rest in, they lose a lot of their capabilities.
Right. Now you can make a Warlock who sucks a little less, if you gear all of your stuff towards the Eldritch Blast to really
and there's a lot that does point toward that. And actually too, I've heard of some multi-class builds where you kind of Gatling gun the Eldritch Blast. Like there's ways to even improve upon it even more. And you can pound the crap out of people with Eldritch Blast, and that's kind of the thing.
Then I mean, you're just basically a gun held by a guy, basically. Like that. Like that's what I see it as. Like, great. But, I've got cantrips all the time, but I don't want that to be like it.
But I mean, that's the main thrust, because you only get 2 spells for sure. I mean, you have other invocations that you can take that could further flavor your character, and only 2 of those are going to be spent towards things that are specific to your Eldritch Blast. So I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with it. There's other things you can do to round out your character, but you're kind of like Jubilee from X-Men, just launching these fireworks.
Oh, we don't need to tailor this heavily towards Warlock.
Well, I wanted to bring up Warlock. That's one of the things you got to think about when using them, as well as being the DM that has them in the game. But we also have Monk relies heavily on getting its points back, right?
Yeah, the points. Yeah.
So we've got a few classes that really kind of peter out if you don't let them get at least 1 short rest in.
But you have plenty of others that are just fine or excel. Other than Action Surge for the fighter's reliably got everything it's going to ever do, every round, every fight. And the Rogue also super awesome, because there's not anything that they do that is full on expended.
Yeah, so if you have a good mix of Warlock, Monk, and then you have the good for everything, kind of like every occasion kind of thing, where you have the fighter and the rogue that can just keep dealing it out.
And the wizard technically does benefit from a short rest as well, being able to get
that
spells.
Once per day they get arcane recovery, so it's only one shot.
But it can be a substantial amount of spells if it's mid.
If you're back to the actual pacing portion of it, if you're running say a dungeon crawl, how many different combats are you having in a day? in a full day between long rests, versus in a wilderness game where, okay, well, you're going to have more potentially long rests more than short rests. How many encounters are you actually putting in there that's going to make a difference for those things where the once a day versus the every short rest?
Well, I think that the norm should be that your players usually have ample opportunity to get in short rests. But I think every once in a while you want to run some sessions or have a portion of your game that's almost like an Iron Man competition where they're just fighting wave after wave, where it's either one long encounter that goes on or like there might be a slight break. They might be able to cast some healing magic or whatever, but there's no full-on short rest that happens.
Okay.
And it's fine to pace your game to where, guess what? The fighter and the rogue really shine in this one instance because usually your spellcasters and your guys that get their stuff back for short rest, they usually look more awesome. Whereas, like, in these ones where, like, you're fighting 3 to 4 basically fights back to back, it really like highlights martial prowess at that point.
So when you've got the situation, you want to look at what is in your party, and you want to plan your encounters session campaign arc to give each particular zone, if you will, a time to really stand out above everyone else. That's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah, and I mean, like that's pretty easy with your spellcasters that are going to have area of effect spells in their back pocket. Like, give a thing where like a big bad villain is like haranguing, like giving a speech to his lackeys, his troops. So they're like right there, one big 20 by 20 cluster, perfect radius for a fireball, right? So, like you just have those ranks filled out, right? And like, already planned that pretty much all those guys are going to be dead or darn near dead at the end of the first wave, which is fine because you put in more villains for them to fight, and they're just shock troops that are meant to go down.
What you can do, I mean, if you're looking for that specific, like, okay, the PCs are going to see that, they're going to do this. You could just say, like, all right, from behind the DM screen, drop a bunch of dice. Don't even let them see the rolls, and don't stat anything, but they fall over dead.
Well, you basically boil them down to 4th edition minion mechanics.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, they took damage. Well, they're dead.
But you give the illusion of you dropping the dice, so that the player's like, all right.
And the best part about that too is if you're playing with minis, like you have them actually put in formation or whatever, and like you show, you individually or like in one mass like tip them over, so the players get to watch the effect of like their fireball having happened.
And
we're getting a little far afield of what we started talking about.
It's still an encounter.
It's plotting your encounters and to allow each player group to shine.
Pacing encounters.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still pacing, like, because that, had you not had an area of effect caster controller in the ranks of your players, that would have been a fight that would have drug on for like 8 rounds and not been very fun. But for the fact that you planned on that, you had that one character that's going to do that one area of effects thing, completely control the pace of that fight. And like you intentionally put it there because otherwise slogfests are never fun. Like those fights that like go on for 10 rounds, like they're boring. It's just like it trickles down to like just a you hit I hit sort of mechanic.
Yeah.
And
unless you're without a dynamic field.
Yeah.
Unless you're getting some kind of descriptor from the players and the GM to really make that combat stand out, to make it seem more interesting and more fun. The I hit you hit gets dull.
Like if it's like 2 wagons or whatever going back and forth, and like you describe, like they're actually in motion the entire fight, like something like that.
Yeah, going over different terrain.
Yeah, something actually happening other than just a static fight.
You're making saves every round to make sure you keep your balance and whatever have you. That kind of stuff. You're adding another dynamic element to the quote-unquote slogfest can...
Yeah, like that could be a fun for 10-round fight, but anything where like you're in like a 50 by 50 dungeon room, like that's...
And there's just a lot of guys that you just have to get through.
Yeah, like that's just not fun. So...
Alright, so the key points is, control the pacing. Don't let, your encounters go on forever. Don't plan encounters that are going to just go on forever unless there's some kind of dynamic reasoning behind what's going on. You want to give all of your players, their moment in the limelight, so that you can highlight the characters who don't need the short rests, and you want to highlight the characters who have got the ability to do grandiose effects. So much so
But they need a little nap.
But they need a little nap. Set up things so that, when they can be like, hey, that low-level wizard walks into a room and, oh crap, there's a bunch of Sturgis. Well, if he's a smart player, he's going to use his sleep and, everybody's going to be fine.
And then there's going to be a dance party.
Yeah. Everybody's going to make sturge wine,
Yeah.
perhaps? Yeah.
So, what do you guys do to help control, pacing and planning in your games? Put in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, even subscribe.
You check the articles over at nerdarchy.com.
You can follow us over on Instagram at Nerdarchy.
So, until next time, stay nerdy.